Hello everyone, welcome to Pro Fight Picks. My name is Valentin and today we're gonna take a look at the Barboza vs Chikadze card, which takes place this Saturday. We're gonna take the whole card at the same time in one video. So let us not wait any longer and let's start with the first fight of the preliminary card. In the first fight of the preliminary card we got Martinez fighting against Canetti. So in September of 2020, Martinez took part in the Dana White Contender Series show. There he actually lost to Draco Rodriguez by submission in the first round and did not receive a contract. And after failing in the Challenger Series, Man returned to Fury FC, the promotion where he was fighting before. Martinez's last fight took place in May 2021. His opponent was Jose Johnson. Man knocked him out in 26 seconds. The fighter was scheduled to make his UFC debut on August 22nd at UFC Vegas 34 against Trevin Jones. However, he decided to withdraw from the fight without giving any explanation. Martinez is a bright finisher, he won all of his fights by knockout, 5 of them in the first round. During the fight he does a lot of work, aggressively smashes opponent on the feet and invests in every shot. In the very first confrontation with a fighter who trains BJJ, Martinez fell for a submission. And, we can say that this actually speaks of the inexperience of the athlete, and in a critical situation, he can make a mistake that will lead to defeat. His opponent, Canetti, had a total of 6 fights in the UFC, 2 of which he won and lost 4. Now he is on a streak of 2 defeats in a row, and in November of 2018 he was submitted by Marlon Vera. And in March 2020 Canetti got knocked out in the first round by Dana Budgerel. It is pretty easy to say that he's an old fighter, he's 41 years old, and he's inferior in speed to young opponents and usually seriously tired in the first half of the fight. He can do takedowns, but Guida's strength and cardio are not enough to keep the opponent on the canvas and gain points through control. And I believe he will not be able to do so to Martinez, so I pick Martinez to win in this fight. Most likely by decision, but KO is possible as well. In the next fight we got Jamel Hermers fighting against Pat Sabatini. For this fight there is not much we can say. I can say that in my opinion Jamel Hermers has a lot more tools in his arsenal comparison to Pat Sabatini. However, I still believe this fight will be pretty interesting as well as competitive. I believe Jamel Hermers will be able to get the W in this fight, so I pick him to win in this fight. In the next fight we got women's flyweight bout. We got JJ Aldrich fighting Vanessa Dimopoulos. So Aldrich fought 8 times in the Ultimate Fighting Championship so far, winning 5 fights and losing 3. The most significant victories by decision over Poliana Viana. Aldrich lost by split decision to Sabine Mazao and won her last fight by decision. What can we say about her? Aldrich is a versatile fighter with good boxing skills. She actually also has BJJ brown belt and Taekwondo black belt. She doesn't have an impressive punching power, but she's fairly technical MMA athlete. Most of her victories in her professional career came by way of decision. Her opponent Vanessa Dimopoulos makes her UFC debut with a 6-3 record. She trained at the Black House in Maine, Los Angeles. Dimopoulos was the first LFA 115-pound champion. For the UFC contract on the Dana White Contender Series, but unfortunately for her, she lost to Corey McKean in 2020. She's been a professional fighter since 2017, and Vanessa also has a pretty impressive amateur career, in which she faced current UFC fighters such as Caitlin Chukagian and Gianna Bice. Vanessa is a classic jitser. She has a brown BJJ belt under the direction of Jiva Santana. Her whole style is built around chokes and submissions. If she fails to bring the fight, however, to the ground, Vanessa usually looks pretty helpless, and she cannot compete with her opponents on the feet. Vanessa Dimopoulos is fighting on short notice, and and Aldrich was originally supposed to fight Tracy Cortez, who got injured last week. In addition, Vanessa is going up to 125-pound division for the first time in her career, so she will be significantly inferior to Aldrich in size and physical strength. Little will change in Aldrich's preparation since she actually needs the same game plan for Vanessa as she needed for Cortez. So I'm pretty sure Aldrich will be able to dominate the whole fight, so I pick her to win. In the next fight we got Dustin Jacoby fighting against Darren Stewart. Dustin Jacoby began his pro career in 2010, but after 11 months he was invited to the UFC. After coming to UFC he lost 2 fights, after which he actually left UFC, and then he returned in October 2020. In 2020 his return was pretty successful. He defeated Justin Ledet via TKO in the first round. Jacoby is a base kickboxer with excellent stand-up skills. He has a solid punching power. Almost all of the fights he won were KOs or TKOs. On the ground, Dustin is not as effective, and a skilled grappler or wrestler can actually take advantage of this gap in his skill set. Moving on to his opponent, Darren Stewart has a black belt in Taekwondo and constantly works on the feet. He won more than half of his victories by KO, while he himself has never lost from the blows of his rivals. 2 stoppage losses in his career were actually obtained by submissions. In this fight we will witness the fight between 2 stand-up fighters. This should be an interesting fight. I believe the confidence and overall stand-up skills of Dustin Jacoby will let him outstrike his opponent despite the size disadvantage. So I pick Jacoby to win by decision in this fight. In the next fight of the preliminary card we got Sam Alvey fighting against Wellington Turman. Sam Alvey has been fighting professionally since 2008 and made his debut in the Ultimate Fighting Championship in 2014. In total, Sam Alvey had 21 fights in the UFC, getting 10 victories with the same number of defeats and 1 draw. In the last 6 fights, Sam lost 5 times, and in the fight with Daun Jin, he was content with a draw. I'm actually quite surprised he wasn't cut yet from the UFC with such record and such performances. Sam Alvey is a base wrestler and wears a BJJ brown belt. Nevertheless, he won by submissions, much less often by KOs. Sam has a powerful punch in his arsenal, but he has not won with a knockout in more than 3 years. His opponent is the 25-year-old Brazilian fighter who started his pro career in 2014 and has a record of 15 wins and 17 fights he had before signing with the UFC. In 2019 he signed with the UFC and his promotional debut ended with a loss by decision to Carl Robertson. In the same year Wellington defeated Marcus Perez by decision, and in August of 2020 Wellington lost by KO to Andrew Sanchez. Truman's base style is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. On the ground and in the clinch he acts more efficiently than on the feet. Although he has a powerful blow, in the early stages of his career he won several times by KOs. I believe Turman will be able to get a win in this fight without any problems. This should be a very confident win for Turman. I would even say it will be quite easy for him. Moving on to the last fight of the preliminary card, we got Antonio Braga Neto fighting against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. In the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Abdul Razak fought 8 times, winning exactly half of them. In the last fight, he lost by decision to Jacob Malkoun. Al Hassan is a pronounced puncher who won all of his fights by KO. He has a pretty good Muay Thai and Judo skills. He himself only once in his career lost inside the distance by KO. Nita, his opponent, won his first bout in the UFC by submission over Anthony Smith, and then lost to Clint Hester and Trevin Giles. Since December 2017, Antonio has not entered the octagon. Nita's base style is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in which he owns a black belt. Antonio won almost all of his fights with submissions. On the ground he is the most dangerous, while on the feet his skills are far from perfect. In addition, a long downtime can negatively affect his condition. Al-Hassan's striking power should be the determining factor in this confrontation. If Nito manages to hold back the onslaught of his opponent, then he will have a chance to catch him with a slick submission. But the Ghanaian needs to win at all costs in order to not be fired from the promotion. I predict that Al-Hassan will win by KO in this fight. Moving on to the main card. In the main card opening fight, we got Mahmoud Muradov fighting against Gerald Meerschaert. So in total, Muradov has 31 fights, in which he won 25 fights, and 20 of them actually he won inside the distance. In his previous fight, which took place in January of 2021, Muradov defeated Andrew Sanchez by KO in the third round. Now the Uzbek fighter has a long winning streak that has been going on for 5 years. However, in the UFC, Muradov began fighting quite recently, in 2019, having signed a contract with Floyd Mayweather's company. In 3 years, he won 3 fights. Prior to that, Muradov fought in organizations such as Octagon and XFM. Despite the fact that Meerschaert is only 2 years older than Muradov, he has much more experience, having 45 fights during his career, in which he won 31. 29 of those he won inside the distance. In the last fight, Meerschaert defeated Fabinski in the first round using a choke. Muradov is a favorite in this fight, since he is a more versatile fighter. He knows how to work both on the feet and on the ground. Muradov won the overwhelming majority of his fights by KO. Only 3 times the Uzbek fighter finished the fight inside the distance with his wrestling techniques. Meerschaert recently lost 5 out of 8 fights. The American tried himself at the heavier division, but to no avail. Meerschaert's main strong point is his grappling. The grappling is where he actually feels like a fish in the water. The American is fluent in jiu-jitsu, which allows him to control his rivals on the canvas. The fight promises to be interesting as 2 fighters of different fighting styles meet. From the first minutes, Meerschaert will try to drag his opponent down, since the American has no chance on the feet. Therefore, Muradov should be very careful not to run into submission. I think he will be able to do so I picked Muradov to win by decision in this fight. In the second fight of the main card, we got Petrovsky fighting against Gilmore. Andre Petrovsky is an ex-LFA and Art of War cage fighter. He finished each fight inside the distance. He won 3 fights by KO/TKO and 2 by submission. His opponent, Gilmore, 34 years old American, with a record of 5 wins and 3 losses, performed in the various organizations but has never been stable, although in the previous 2 fights he managed to confidently win. Perhaps Gilmore, who is experiencing serious problem in the wrestling department, will lose this fight. Most likely he will not have enough skills to properly protect himself from transitions. Once on the ground, Andre Petrovsky will turn on his aggressive ground and pound or submit the enemy, so I picked Petrovsky to win this fight. In the next fight, we got pretty interesting matchup. We got Kevin Lee fighting against Daniel Rodriguez. So Kevin Lee is a base wrestler with good skills in BJJ, but it cannot be denied that his stand-up game is getting better over time. He as well possesses the knockout power. In the last 5 appearances, Lee has as many as 3 losses, but he had to deal with the top opposition and nothing more. 61% of fights were won by finishes. He got 3 KOs or TKOs and 8 submissions. In a 3-round fight, he performed 3 takedowns on average, and 43% of the total number of attempts were successful. He also has a pretty good takedown defense of 75%. In fights, Kevin is in his 10th year, and during this time he became the champion of TWC and also claimed the interim UFC belt. The post-notorious victories in his career were fights with Gregor Gillespie, Edson Barboza and Michael Chiesa. At the same time, Lee always lost in the most important fights for his career. For example, the fights with Tony Ferguson, Charles Oliveira and Rafael dos Anjos, and others. Kevin Lee has a good ground and pound technique, and on the feet he pays a lot of attention to the body and the head of the opponent, bypassing the low kicks though. His opponent, Rodriguez, trains in the BMF Ranch and 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu gyms, First of all, Daniel is a Thai boxer, but his BJJ also deserves attention. In the last 5 fights he lost only to Nicholas Dalby, and in the last 3 years he demonstrated an enviable frequency of performances. He finished 80% of his fights inside the distance. He got 8 KOs or TKOs and 4 submissions. He performs no more than 1 takedown per fight, and the overall effectiveness of his attempts is 56%. At the same time, he has a great takedown defense of 83%. Rodriguez's professional career began only in 2015, and since then he has tested himself in the middle and welterweight divisions. He managed to defeat Tim Means, Mike Perry, Dwight Grant, and a couple of lesser-known opponents. Unlike his counterpart, Daniel works more variedly in the stance, drawing more than 30% of the blows to the body and legs of his opponents. Despite the odds, Kevin Lee's position of the favorite is not as logical as it might seem. Yes, he recently fought with the current lightweight champion Charles Oliveira, and in general this guy's record is much more serious than that of Rodriguez. But which of the tops did Lee beat? The answer is pretty simple. He lost to everyone, and even to Ali Guinta, who left the elites a long time ago. Moreover, a long downtime, even taking into account the training in the team of Georges St. Pierre, in his case is unlikely to benefit the body. At this time, Daniel fights almost every 4 or 5 months, and the fact that he goes against such an opponent on short notice does not necessarily play to his determined. Rodriguez is good at stopping takedowns, pressing opponents, striking a lot, and often ending fights inside the distance, so I tend to believe that he will be the winner of this fight, so I pick Rodriguez to win. In the next fight of the main card we got Ricky Turcios fighting against Brady Hiestand. Turcios is a 28 years old fighter from the United States and a native of Houston. His professional record is 10 wins and 2 losses. He has been performing since 2013. He was still in amateurs in 2011 and he took part in the Contender Series in 2017, but then he could not prove himself properly. Now the fate of his UFC contract will be decided through the Ultimate Fighter show. His opponent, Brady Hiestand, is a 22 years old US fighter born in Washington DC. His professional record is 5 wins and 1 loss. He has been performing since 2018 and began performing in amateurs since 2017. He mainly took part in the Excite Fight promotion. It was here that he got noticed and actually invited to get a chance to receive a UFC contract. I believe that the favorite, which is Turcios, will be ahead by a large margin in this fight. It is not easy to adjust to him, and it is also not easy to take him to the ground. Even if Hiestand manages to score a takedown, it is unlikely that he will be able to finish his opponent. Ricky has not lost by submission yet, and on the feet he has enough skills to disassemble his opponent step by step. Ultimately, Turcios will win either inside the distance or by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we got the Ultimate Fighter finale, in which we got Bryan Battle fighting against Gilbert Urbina. Bryan Battle is a 26 years old American with a professional record of 5 wins and 1 loss. He previously fought in such organizations as HRMMA, SMMA, and FFIT. He basically wins all of his fights inside the distance usually, scoring 1 victory by KO and 3 by submissions. His opponent, Gilbert Urbina, is a 25 years old fighter from the United States with Mexican roots, who possesses a record of 6 wins and 1 loss. He previously fought in promotions such as Combate Americas, LFA, Hero FC, and STFC. He has 3 wins inside the distance in his asset and won the same number of times by decision. Perhaps approximately equal rivals in the balance of power will meet here. Battle being a favorite in this confrontation seems a little odd, as he has serious cardio problems. Bryan starts briskly but fizzles out pretty quickly. Taking into account that no one will have superiority in size, we will face a duel with equal chances of success. Nevertheless, I believe that the coefficient for Urbina is overestimated. Still, Battle was prepared for another opponent, and stylistically he will have to face an uncomfortable for him opponent. This fight can go by any scenario, but I pick Urbina to win. And finally, the main event of the evening. In the main event we got Edson Barboza fighting against Giga Chikadze. So the 35 years old Brazilian is once again becoming one of the key figures in the UFC, but in a different weight. Since May last year, Barboza has been fighting in the featherweight division with a 2-1 record. At first, Edson lost very controversially to Dan Ige, but then quite confidently passed Makwan Amirkhani and Shane Burgos. At 145 pounds, the veteran regained the strength he had surprised everyone with early in his career. In total, the native of Rio de Janeiro has 22 wins and 9 defeats. Barboza, above all, loves to work on his feet. Edson has good classic boxing as well as great Muay Thai skills. The main weapon of the Brazilian veteran is kicking. The 35 years old fighter often uses low kicks and can also shoot kicks on the upper levels. At 145 pounds he has 1 knockout so far, but in 12 years of his career he has knocked out 13 opponents. Barboza has a quality grappling, although he has only recently started using it. Edson has a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. On the other side, his opponent, the 32 years old Ninja, burst into the top 10 of the contender rankings in May this year, when he won by heavy knockout over Cap Swanson. This win became the 6th win for Chikadze in the American promotion. Previously, Giga defeated little-known rivals, which is why he could not advance in the ranking in any way. Now the Georgian featherweight is starting the title race, and a victory over Barboza could bring him substantial dividends. The record of the native of Tbilisi is 15 fights, in 13 of which he walked away from the cage as a winner. The last defeat of Ninja is dated June 2018. Chikadze's height is 6 feet with a reach of 74.8 inches. Despite the fact that Barboza is a natural lightweight, Giga is not inferior to him in size. In striking, the Georgian is much more varied and creative than the Brazilian. The 32 years old Ninja has a 3rd degree belt in Goju-Ryu Karate. Also a featherweight from Tbilisi, was engaged in kickboxing. In sport of kickboxing, he had a record of 38 wins and 6 losses. So far, Chikadze's ground game has raised certain questions. Giga has excellent takedown defense, but at some point he will have to be on the canvas. Overall in the UFC, the Georgian has 8 knockouts. Moving on to prediction, equal bookmaker odds fully reflect the real balance of power in my opinion. On the one hand, Barboza has more experience in MMA performances. Edson has been fighting at a high level for a long time, and his beaten opposition is much stronger than the one of the Georgian. On the other hand, at 35 years old, the Brazilian cannot add with every fight. He keeps a consistently high level, but the veteran lacks work rate. I think Chikadze will throw more punches. Given Giga's experience in kickboxing and karate, it is unlikely that Barboza will be able to overwhelm him from the long range. It is more likely that Edson will try to move his opponent to the canvas. Nevertheless, I think Chikadze will be able to counter those attempts, and my pick will be in the favor of 32 years old prospect from Tbilisi, who has seriously progressed in recent battles, so I pick Giga Chikadze to win in this fight. And that's it for this Saturday's event. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and write down in the comment section below what do you think about the picks and what picks do you have. I'll see you soon.